Hello everyone, welcome to today's video where we will be going over duplicating a blueprint with Autocad. You'll notice that I'm on Autocad for Mac and it may look differently for you if you're on a PC, but the commands are the same that we'll type in. The location will be different, but again the commands are the same. So I'm going to begin by opening a template because I want to start out of a template. Now template files have this DWT file extension. So I'm going to open file or project. I'm going to go to my Autocad. I'm going to select this DWT template for DDCC. And you'll see when we open it that it's open to our wide letter page, and this is a viewport, and this is not the model space. So we'll actually do a lot of editing in this tab, which is the model space. Now you can see our print. I've noticed something down here that we need to delete. So I'm just zooming in and out using the wheel on my mouse. So you can see on the Mac system that all of my buttons are over here on the left side, as opposed to having access to them along the top ribbon. And that's fine. So this project is a Plumb Bob, so I'm going to go ahead and save it as a Plumb Bob. Again, I'm going to go back to Autocad and I'll just save it here in this main area. And I'm going to type Plumb Bob. And instead of saving it as a DWT, I will save it as a DWG file. Save. Now, I'm not going to start drawing inside of my paper space here. I'm going to come over here and draw somewhere else out in space. This will keep me from having to worry about intersecting with these lines and cutting and trimming. I can get my drawing done and done as well as I want it to without having to worry about all of that. So before we start drawing, go on over here to our layer tab on the right hand side and click this button that says new layer. And I'm going to call this layer model. I could double click it to activate it, or I can select this drop down, select model, and now that is my active layer. You'll notice down here I have the properties to the right hand side. If you do not have properties up, all you have to do is right click on an object. So let's say we had a box right here. I could click on this and select properties, or if it's selected, I can type properties. But since my tab is already up here on the side, I don't have to do that, because when I select it, it already knows these are the properties I'm selecting. I'm going to hit delete to get rid of that box. Now over here in our toolbar, it might be up here for you if you're on a PC. Either way, the buttons are the same. If you'll select over your rectangle tool, and maybe you can hit the drop down arrow, or if you're on a Mac, you hold down, and we're going to select this polygon tool. A Plumb Bob is made from 3/4 hex material, so I'm getting a command prompt to enter the number of sides. I'm going to type 6. I'm going to select enter. Now it's asking me to specify the center of the polygon. I'm going to just go right here. After a single click, I get an option that says, do I want this hexagon to be inscribed in a circle or circumscribed about the circle? The difference is if I inscribe it within a circle, that means the distance from one point to the opposite point will be the diameter of my circle, which is the largest size that the hex could be. But if I do it circumscribed about a circle, that means that the distance from one flat of my hexagon to another flat will be the diameter of my circle. So I'm going to select circumscribed about a circle. That's the type of hexagon I need to draw. I'm going to hit enter, specify the radius. The diameter of my hex is 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to type 3 divided by 8 because 3/8 is half of 3/4. Therefore it is the radius. If I zoom in here, you can see now. For the purpose of my drawing, I need the points to be vertical and the flats to be horizontal. So I'm going to click down and to the right of it, and I'm not going to hold my left click. I'm going to release it, and then I'm going to drag up and to the left to get the green box. I don't want the blue box to the right. If I drag to the right, down or up, it doesn't matter. Then I get a blue box. In a blue box, I would have to select the entire part in order to select it. If I only select part of it in a blue box, it will not select the item I'm trying to select. But if it's green, I don't have to do the whole thing. I can only do part of it, and it will select the entire object. So after I have selected it, I'm going to right click and hit rotate. Now I want the geometric center. So I've done that by highlighting a point on this, and it populates the geometric center. I drag straight down so that it gives me a 90-degree line, and I click. Now, if your snaps are not on, that's object snap tracking. Down on your bottom bar, whether you're on a PC or a Mac, you should see this partial triangle with a dot. Right click that and click settings. It may say track settings, and your screen will look something similar to this. Go ahead and select all and OK. So we want to be able to select everything possible. Now, I don't like the location of this polygon. I have OCD, so I'm going to move it. I'm going to zoom in to get it as much over this center line as I possibly can. Make it nice and squared up. Now the next thing I need to do for my Plumb Bob is draw a circle. So I'm going to go over here to Circle, and I'll click the drop down arrow, or I'll hold it down. I'm going to select Circle Center Diameter. Again, I want to go to the center of this hexagon. Now it's asking me for the diameter of my circle. My next diameter is 5/8 of an inch. I could type 0.625, or I could type 5/8. Either way will give the correct circle. Now I need another circle that's center diameter, so I select it again. This one's going to be 1/4 inch, 0.25, or 1/4. And one more circle here on the center, and it's 3/32 of an inch. Now we have what will be the right view of our part done. Next, I'm going to start drawing the hex, and I want you to follow these steps. I'm going to go off the center, and I'm going to come over here a good distance, give it a little bit of space. Doesn't have to have too much though. We'll start it right here. And see this green line that is tracked from the center? I want to make sure that green line is showing when I click again to start my line. I want this line to draw at 90 degrees. So I could do this a couple of different ways. I could type 180, which is the case because I'm going to the left. It would be 0 degrees if I were going to the right. Or, instead of typing, nope, it won't let me out of it now. That's fine. Instead of typing, let's escape. Draw a line again. We'll start here. And I can turn ortho mode on by holding Shift as I drag. Now, I need this particular line to be a certain length. I need it the full length of my part, which is 4 inches. So I'm going to type 4, enter. Now I don't want to end my draw command because my part has a taper on it that is 18 degrees. So I'm going to hold my cursor up here, up and to the right. And I'm going to type 18. So to change between the length and the angle, I press Tab. When you see these in blue, I'm pressing Tab to change between the length here or the angle here. So I don't know exactly how long this taper needs to be. I have a call out on my part, but it might not turn out that it's exactly right. So I'm just going to drag it out a good ways. And I'm going to click and then escape to finish. Draw another line. See the box that is snapping to this endpoint. I'll click there. This time I'm going to drag my line down and to the right. I'm going to tab and type in 18 for 18 degrees again. Drag it a good ways out here, and then escape when I'm done. Now I can leave that be for a minute. Got a nice little arrow going here. Now I want to start drawing the features on this end of my part. So the first thing I notice is I have a segment that is 3/8 long, and it starts out at the diameter of this 1/4 inch. So I'm going to draw a line, and I'm going to hover over the top quadrant of this 1/4 inch circle. And you'll notice a green diamond will come up on this quadrant, and it even says quadrant there on the screen. And I'm just going to drag over with this green line. Then I'm going to take and I'm going to hover over this endpoint. And I have a green box. I'm going to drag up. And now where that crosshair is, I'm ready to click. I want my line to be drawn dead on 0 degrees or 180 degrees in this case. I could shift and drag, or I can type 180 so that I'm able to type my precise distance, which is in this case 3/8 of an inch or 0.375. Now instead of just dragging down somewhere and clicking, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to highlight the bottom quadrant of this 1/4 inch circle. And you notice if I zoom out, if I zoom in or zoom out, that green line goes away. So once I highlight something, I can't zoom in or out, I can't pan either. So I'm going to come down here, and it almost snaps to 90 degrees, but I'm going to have to shift click in order to get the ortho to snap on. Now in this case, I'm going to highlight where I started my box, and it's going to turn green. I'm going to shift click to snap it, and then I'm just going to finish the box. Press escape when I'm done. Now I have my first feature here. I'm going to right click instead of going over to my toolbar and selecting the draw line. I'm going to right click, and you notice this repeat line comes up. So I'm going to select that. Then I'm going to go over the top quadrant of this larger circle that is 5/8 of an inch. I'm going to drag over, and I'm going to select the top left corner of this box and click right there. Now once again, I want to make sure to go at 180 degrees because I want this line to be nice and flat. And the distance I need to go is 9/16. Now I don't feel like converting 9/16 to a decimal. If you know the decimal conversion, that's fine. I'm just going to type 9/16 in, press enter, and I have a new line. Then I'm going to drag to the bottom quadrant, come over here, select ortho, shift click, select here, shift click, and finish the box. Escape when we're done. Now we almost have a part, so right click, repeat line again. Now I'm going to select the top point of our hex, and this is why we needed the points to be vertical. I'm going to come over here, this corner, click, and I'm just going to draw this. I'm going to shift click so that it's ortho, and I just need to go past the angle intersection. So I'm going to zoom in so you can see a little bit better. Right there. I'm going to come back here and I'm going to highlight the bottom corner of the hex. We'll shift click, get our crosshair there. Excellent. Now right here, shift click, and finish our box. Now we have what is beginning to look like a part. I could get ahead of myself and start trimming. I don't want to do that just yet. I want to start drawing the radii that are here and here. So to do this, I'm not going to select the arc tool. Instead, I'm going to use a circle, but instead of a center diameter or even a center radius, I'm going to instead use a 2-point circle. So I'm going to select somewhere on this line. I could do the midpoint. I'm not going to use the midpoint though. And see this green hourglass that says nearest? That's when I know I've selected the line. And I want to make sure this second point is 90 degrees from the first. So I want it to stay right tangent to that bottom line. And it's now asking me to enter the diameter of the circle, the radius of which is 3/8 of an inch. So if I double that, I get 3/4 or 0.75. Now that's not quite right just yet. You notice it doesn't finish at this line, it finishes way past where we need it to. So I'm going to select over here, I'm going to click once, drag to the left, highlight the circle, then I'm going to right click and I'm going to select move. Then instead of trying to click somewhere up here and try to make sure I move it exactly where I need to, I'm going to use my object snap settings so that I'll select on the intersection of this arc and this line. Then I'm just going to drag it straight over to the end point where they touch. And that's going to be important that the line touches down here and right here. That's very important to how my part is drawn. So now I want to mirror this part. So I'm going to use the mirror function in the Modify tab. I'm going to select my circle and then select mirror. It's going to ask me to select the first point of a mirror line. So since I want it to be on the exact opposite side of this square or rectangle right here, I'm going to select this point that's right in the middle. And then I'm going to shift click out and to the right, making sure ortho turns on. It'll ask if I want to erase the source object. I'm going to click no. We're going to do the same thing with the other radius. Our blueprint says that the radius is 3/8 typical, which means that all of the radii in this part of my blueprint are 3/8 of an inch. So again, I'm going to click get the hourglass here, straight up at 90 degrees, and 0.75 the diameter of a 3/8 radius. I'm going to click it, right click and move nearest to the corner. Once again, selecting it, the mirror, shift click out to the right. Don't erase the source object. Now I have a weird looking part, and I have a lot of excess lines, so I need to begin to get rid of those. So I'm going to select all these lines. I'm going to click and drag to the left, selecting all these lines. I'm going to go in my Modify tab, click the scissors or the trim command. I could also have typed trim, That would have been adequate. I'm going to start getting rid of lines I don't need. For instance, I don't need this line. I don't need this line here. I'm going to zoom in. And you can also click and drag this way as well. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to come up here, click and drag. I'm going to come down here, click and drag. Click. You get the idea. Zoom in a little closer so that I'm careful with what I'm getting rid of. And then I can begin to delete some of these interior lines, the ones that we'll erase. Make sure you don't get rid of any lines that need to be there. Alright. Now it looks like we've trimmed pretty much everything that we're able to trim. So I'm going to hit enter or escape. I do want to get rid of these lines, however, so I'm going to click and drag to select them and just click delete. And do the same with these here. Now this line really does begin to look like our part, our Plumb Bob. But to finish, there are a couple more dimensions that we need. First, we need a circle here that represents a hole that will be drilled to center. So I'm going to select the line command, and I want to go to the center. Notice how the triangle comes to the midpoint of this line, represents the midpoint of this line. I'm going to tab so I hit 180 degrees, and then for the length of my line I'm going to do 5/8 or 0.625. This will give me the center of my circle. So I go back to the circle command. I'm going to select circle center diameter. Go from that endpoint. The diameter of this circle is 3/16 of an inch. Don't need this line anymore, so we'll delete it. I do, however, need a line that goes from here to here. I also need a line that represents this hole, but is hidden if I were actually looking at this part. This hole right here would be hidden from view. So I'm going to draw some lines, and I'm going to use the quadrant snap, top quadrant. And it's going to be really hard for me to go ahead and start right here. Notice how my green line sort of goes away. But if I instead come out here, I still hit the top of this quadrant. And I can shift click through, I'll zoom in, shift click through the edge of this circle. Let's repeat our line command. Go to the bottom quadrant. Start it out here. Shift click as well. Have two straight lines there. Let's select these and trim the excess lines. So I'm going to trim this one and these two. Now, if I were looking at this blueprint as it was, I would think that this is a slot right here. So I need to make lines that represent what these are, which are hidden lines. I'm going to zoom in and select both lines. And over here in my Properties tab, if you don't have it pulled up, type in Properties and select it. When your Properties tab comes up, go to the line type under the general section. Select that. You notice nothing comes up that I need, so I'm going to click Manage and then Load. Now looking through all these different line types, I want the standard hidden lines, and I'm going to click Add. OK. Now back to line type, and I can select Hidden. Now this way I only get 2 dashes. That's still not very clear, so I'm not going to deselect. I'm going to change the line type scale in my properties. It's at 1 right now. Let's change it to 0.4 and see if that looks better. Yes, that looks much better. Escape to deselect. Now I've properly represented the hole that this circle stands for, which is a drilled hole in the end of my Plumb Bob. And now I believe it's time to add some lines along through here. So we're going to select our line command. I'm going to select this corner, and then I'm going to select this edge here. And I'm not clicking those, I'm just hovering over them to highlight them. It's not really giving me the snap. There it goes. And I'm going to keep it at 180 degrees. Repeat our line command, right click, repeat line, whoops. Hover over it, don't click it. Hover over this line here. And click. Let's get this properly selected here. Excellent. All right. And click Escape. Now to properly look like machined hex, I need to add some arcs here. So I'm going to do that by selecting my arc. Instead of 3 points, I'm going to select arc, start, center, angle. So for the arcs here on the left side, I want to start with the top, then select the bottom. You can see this arc. My angle is going to be something like 80 degrees. Whoops. That doesn't look at all correct. Oh, not start center angle, I'm sorry. Start end angle. Let's try a different arc type there. Start, end, and we'll make the angle about 110 degrees. Right click, repeat arc, start, end, it's not really liking me right now. Let's do it this way. This is one of the most frustrating parts, I thought, about drawing these. Let's trim that guy back. And we'll repeat our arc here. Just in a way that it looks appropriate. Start at the bottom of this one here. There we go. You'll have to forgive my fingers sometimes. Can trim that like so. Back to our arc. $110 there. All right. Now we're able to begin dimensioning our part. And so we're going to use our dimension features down here, and we're going to change the way those dimensions look. But in order to do that, I want to put all of my dimensions on their own layer. So I'm going to create a new layer and type dimensions. Then I'm going to double click to activate that layer. Select this generic dimensioning tool here. I'm going to zoom in to my hex. We can select anywhere on this line. I'm going to select this bottom point and this bottom point. You'll notice 0.75 shows up. I'm going to zoom out and pan a little bit so you can see. I'm going to give ourselves plenty of room down below. I think right here looks pretty good. Now you'll notice the dimension feature is still active. So I can go ahead and select a new thing. Now, I cannot select these diameters because the generic dimension has to change. And notice how I have to hover over it specially to get the diameter to come up. And go ahead and do that in a couple of different places. Let's go right there. Let's put this 0.625 up here. We're going to change that in a little bit. .25 will go straight out to the right, and then the smaller 3/32 will bring down here to the bottom. We'll change the way those look shortly, Again, my dimension feature is still active, so I'm going to hover over this point and hover over the midpoint, keeping it nice and flat. And I want it to be parallel or collinear to this dimension. So I'm going to select that and click enter so that they're even and my blueprint will look really nice that way. Then I'm going to select again the endpoint here, and instead of clicking right here and trying to drag a dimension out, because this isn't correct, so instead I'm going to come up and shift click to get my ortho dimension on, and I'm going to drag down somewhere in the middle, about right here. I'll do the same thing back here. I'm going to select this point, and I'm going to hover over this point and come up and shift click at 0.5625. Again, I want these to be collinear right there. With this one, I can select this point and I can select this line, where they're perpendicular. And don't worry about the overlap that's creating. We'll fix that when we edit our dimensions. Select the midpoint again, and then I'm going to select the midpoint of my circle. I'm going to click and drag up and keep it parallel or collinear to that. Now let's hit enter or escape. I'm going to go down in my dimensioning, and I want to properly dimension a diameter. So you might see this dimension linear and a drop down with it where you can hold it, and notice it says dimension diameter. I'm going to select that, then I'm going to click this circle. Now I've got one more dimension. Now if your properties tab is still open to the side, that's good. We're about to make use of it. I also need to dimension the radii. So instead of a diameter dimension, I need this radius dimension. And I'm just going to select this one here. And since they're all the same, you see how it snaps to all these different points, and I'll be able to drag that away. Whoops. Let's hit escape there. Oop. Undo that. Move text only. Oops. That's fine. We'll leave it there for now until we change all of our dimensions. So I'm going to select everything here. And notice in properties where it says all, I'm going to click, and let's start with our radial dimensions. Let's scroll down here. We're going to change some settings. First, I want to fit the text inside, so under the fit category, text inside. Then with the primary units, I want to change from decimal to fractional. I'm going to switch to diametric dimensions, and I'm going to change the same two things. Primary units, fractional. It might change you out of that, so we'll go back to diametric so that we can also, under fit, change the text to inside. I'll move to rotated dimensions. Fit the text inside. And back down to units. Switch to fractional. Last but not least, align dimensions. Let's first switch to fractional, and then we'll click text inside. We'll click escape and finish our cleanup a little bit. Right click, stretch, and since I'm just selecting this dimension, I can come down here and turn off the center mark, so none. Do need the dimension line, but I don't need this extension line. That's much better. Stretch. I'm going to move it into line with this here. Make a nice clean blueprint here. Let's use that as our start there. Excellent. Escape. There we go. Now, a couple of things I forgot. I did forget the angular dimension here, so we're going to select dimension again. We're just going to select somewhere on this line and then this line, and we'll drag it out to about right here. And that's set, just how it needs to be. Now I need to add two things. First is to this 3/4, I need to add the word hex. So I'm going to double click that dimension. You'll notice my cursor is here to the left. I'm going to tap the right arrow inside of it. Forgive that. There's the right arrow. And then with my caps lock on, I'm going to type hex and save. Now I have 3/4 hex. On this 3/16 diameter, I need to annotate and add the words. We'll hit enter to center. Save. And it'll adjust appropriately. This 3/8 radius also needs to be a 3/8 typical radius. Now this dimension doesn't look good on the inside, so I'm going to select just this one and come down here to our fit and deselect the text inside. You'll notice that looks much cleaner. Now we're ready to select everything. Right click and select move. I'm going to select this node right here. Now I can drag and move my part inside of my blueprint. And I'm going to center it appropriately. I think about right here should do it. Now I need to fill out these fields. So I'm going to select my text key. I'm going to zoom in. And I'm going to draw a text box. Description of this part is a Plumb Bob. Now that text is obviously too large, so I'm going to select it, and up here I'm going to change it to 0.15. That appears that it will work. Select the text and we will position it how we need to position it. You'll notice there is a node that is keeping me from moving it. Still looks like it's a bit too big, so we'll reselect it again and go down instead to 0.13. And let's center the text for good measure. Now I'm going to select it without opening the text editor. I'm going to right click and copy selection. Then a little node will come up here in the top. I'm going to select that. And about right here is where I want that to go. And about right here is where we want that to go. That doesn't look too great right there, so I'm going to shift it down a little bit. And I could do the same with the Plumb Bob. I could shift it down and make it a little larger. The material is going to be brass hex. As for the drawing number, let's give it a drawing number of DDCC-01. All of my tolerances are already down here in my document. I do need to go over and put in my name, so I'm going to select this text again, right click, copy selection. We use that little node. Come over here and put that there. And we'll put this somewhere about right here. Backspace and put NB for my initials. We'll save. I'm going to hover this over this line and move this to this line so it'll be centered, and then we need to shift it down a little bit. That's a lot better. Let's do the same here before we get started. I'm not worried about that because it'll go away momentarily. Today's date, 2/8/22. Now I zoom out. And I'm satisfied with the way everything looks right here. So I'm going to select my wide letter tab. Notice how it populates to my view screen, just as it should. So I'm going to select File, Print. Wide letter, paper size 8.5 by 11. Save as PDF. And I just want it to be called Plumb Bob. It'll export. And that's the end of this tutorial.